Hey everybody, it's your favorite reconstructionists, Eric Brown and Phil Relly, and welcome to episode number 2 of the one and only show bringing you tips and tricks to working vehicle collision cases from the best experts in the industry every Wednesday. Today's topic is, you don't need evidence unless you want to win. So grab your Crash Tech, the Expert Angle coffee mug and settle in. 3, 2, 1, off we go. Every year, traffic crashes claim the lives of over 1 million people and account for over $500 billion of injuries around the world. A small select group of people, from police to attorneys to expert investigators, are tasked with getting justice for the victims, protecting the rights of involved parties, and ensuring the story is told accurately and honestly. Unfortunately, we believe that is an impossible task without the right team of experts. If you agree, then keep on listening for actionable tips from leading experts across various industries that you can start taking today to elevate your professional game. If you disagree, then tune in anyway and let us convince you with our ideas. We are Eric Brown and Phil Relly, and this is Crash Tech, the Expert Angle. Welcome back to the show, guys. Crash Tech, the Expert Angle podcast is brought to you by Crash Tech Reconstruction Services. If you have an accident that you need answers for, or you think the other side has it wrong, Crash Tech can help. Connect with us at www.crashtechreconstruction.com to submit your case for a free review. So Phil, today is kind of an interesting day because we're going to dive into content for the first time on our podcast. Yay. I need to add some sound effects in there. We need to get a soundboard, add some people clapping. So we had a show planned for you guys. We had this wonderful show planned. And we're going to switch it up, though, a little bit for today because of the whole COVID thing going on. And this is not going to be a show about that. Don't worry about it. We're not going to dive into politics. We're not going to dive into the medical stuff. What our concern is because we're in unique times. Let's just leave it at that. We're going to make this a children-friendly show. We're in unique times. So because of that, the Supreme Court's told all of your guys' deadlines for filing cases and the statute of limitations, all these things have all been pushed out to give you guys more time. And what's the result to attorneys? Well, you guys, I guarantee, are all thinking in the back of your minds that it is going to be years now down the road until you get paid on some of these cases. Because even if you can file them, right now the courts are starting to be backlogged. We're still doing things virtually. Very few things are coming into the courthouses live. The judges are handling criminal cases and all this other stuff in front of us. So I know that cost is one thing that you guys want to look at. And so you don't want to dump money into reconstructions right now because you can't file cases. And I get that. I 100% get that. But there's another part that I think we're overlooking here that we need to discuss. And that's this whole thing about evidence. What do you think, Phil?
Wow, evidence. Interesting concept. Yeah.
Because let me ask you this. Have you worked a case where an attorney calls or an insurance company or anybody, private person calls, and they go, hey, man, can you look at this case? And we're like, yeah, absolutely. When did it happen? Well, it happened 5 years ago. Oh, okay. Do you have any photographs? No photographs were taken. Okay. Go out to the road and the road's been repaved or the intersection's been changed and there's no measurements. And we go, well, do we have access to the cars? No, both cars have been destroyed. Ever work a case like that?
Yeah. Kind of reminds you of the, you can see the mountain getting bigger and bigger and bigger in front of your eyes as the responses to the questions are no, or don't have that, or, it just creates a situation where the quality of the case from an evidentiary stance gets a lot weaker. It's, I hate to say this, but I think there's an assumption, and that's always dangerous. But I think there's an assumption when people start looking into these or get the phone rings and it's a client on the other end saying, man, this is what happened. I need to retain an attorney. Yeah. That when the incident happened, it was done right. That there's just hundreds of photographs lying in wait at the police department or the state agency or whatever. Wow, that's dangerous.
Yeah, and let me kind of throw this idea out there too at you but the police department or police agency or the troopers or the sheriffs or whoever, but they took measurements. Oh, okay. That's great. But how great a quality. And remember, Phil and I both teach accident investigations in the academy and everything. What's the quality of those measurements?
You're going to have, if you have a 2-car crash, you're going to have at least 6 measurements.
Right? Yeah, 6 measurements. And so the case I'm working a case right now. And they took, I'm actually looking at the report here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 measurements. And of the 6 measurements, 4 of them are wrong. So, they put cars like off in fields and they're not even on the intersection. So just because the police department took measurements and some photographs, I don't know that I would hang my hat on that. Now, that's not to say that the case can't be worked. But, we're not saying that you're dead in the water and that us or another reconstruction company couldn't handle this. We're just saying the quality might not be the greatest from the evidentiary standpoint.
Right. Absolutely.
So
what options do you have at that point? Well, your options are then you need to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah. And that's exactly it.
Go get that evidence now. Don't assume that, agency A did everything that you would need them to do, and you'll just get the case file, 6 months from now and everything will be there. That won't. I guarantee you it won't be there.
And especially too, because think about this. A lot of people are like, well, all the police have body cams, right? But you got to remember that most police organizations, unless you have a specific request for that body cam footage, overwrite it. It only retains for so long. And a lot of some of these bigger cities, because of the amount of data. I mean, if they have hundreds of officers out and their body cameras now are recording almost their entire shift. And so when all of these recordings are coming in to the data banks, they're just filling up really, really fast. And so a lot of them, most agencies seem to only retain their videos for maybe 30 days, unless they're tagged.
Right.
Unless there's a request to retain that video. So by the time all of the current restrictions are lifted, those videos are going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about some evidence on the roadway. Okay. So the police department painted it, right? We threw some paint marks out on the marks and everything. Now, some of your gouges, really deep gouges into the asphalt, some of those may still be there. And they may be there for quite a while. But what about just light scrapes and tire marks, Phil? What do you think? I mean, in your experience, how long are those lasting on the roadway?
Not as long as what people assume they would be. Scrapes will be there for a little while longer. But they have a tendency to the sharpness of them to round off with continual traffic running over top of them, and they kind of blend into their background, become harder to find. But tire marks, I guarantee you tire marks are going to be, they're either going to fade off, or they're going to get marked over marks where other incidents or near misses have occurred. And now, the integrity of the original mark that's part of your case you're looking at is going to be hidden by a mark from another incident over top of it. So,
yep, absolutely.
That lying back and waiting, I think is not doing a good service to your case, because especially in these times, you need to get out now. And let me take that back. In general, you need to get out. You need to get out as quickly as you can after your incident happens.
Yeah, but Phil, that's expensive. That's expensive, right? And especially if these cases aren't going to pay out, possibly for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, depending on what it is and everything. So
I think it depends on what you either want evidence then or you don't want evidence. I agree with you. There's money involved in it. Nobody's going to go out for free and spend 8 hours doing, what evidence gathering and so on, scene mapping and vehicle inspections and so on. And I don't think it would be, it wouldn't be right to expect a person to go out and work for free. But at the end of the day, this is evidence that you are going to rely on in a courtroom proceeding in front of a jury And if you've got nothing to present them, I mean, picture yourself sitting in the jury seat.
Yeah. Well, and so think about this too, right? So if we're battling another reconstruction firm, let's say that we are working on a case that's for the plaintiff side, and there's no evidence in this case, none, no markings left on the roadway, no tire marks, no anything. Mm-hmm. And so we're able to at least formulate an opinion. And the insurance company hires another reconstruction firm who also has no evidence, but they're able to formulate an opinion. How strong is that personal injury case? When we get into negotiations, well, not us, but when the attorneys get into negotiations with the insurance company, their reconstruction company is going to say 180 degrees opposite of what we're saying, because they're going to be defending. And so which reconstructionist is right? How strong is your case to go in front of a jury? Both experts really relied on very limited evidence and just had to kind of go off of maybe Newton's laws for vehicle, post-impact positions and things like that, and maybe some statements, deposition testimony. And there are things that we can look at. But at the end of the day, there's no hard physical evidence to support one side or the other.
So then at that point, it just becomes theory.
Yeah.
Your interpretation of an individual's response and developing an opinion based on a theory that what this person said is 100% what actually happened. Yeah. Because if it lines up, it lines up with what Newton's laws say should happen.
Right.
The strength of that argument, I don't know that I would hang my hat on it.
Right. Absolutely.
Think about it. It doesn't. Good.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, if you think about it, the big slam dunk cases, the ones that we see big verdicts on, are the ones when, even though the other side brings in another expert, you're like, look, our expert has this evidence that supports his opinions. And if we go into a jury trial, the evidence is going to support my guy's opinion. And when you have that solid foundation to stand on, the offer is going to be much higher to keep it out of trial. And even if it does go to trial, the jury's going to be like, oh man, yeah, this guy's 100% the more credible expert, whichever one the evidence supports.
When you can take a blown up picture or put it on an overhead and let the jury see this long gouge mark and tire marks or rotation marks and things like that, or where the marks where the vehicle rotated. When your expert is on the stand testifying to the fact of the rotation and how this vehicle left the area of impact and so on and moved out to final rest, that's one thing. I mean, that's tangible. That's something the jury can put their eyes on, and the expert can point to this mark, this gouge. But when you're sitting there offering up, this is how the car moved, and the jury's going, okay, do you have a picture of that? No. So we're just supposed to believe because you said it. That's it.
Yeah.
If you're not going out shortly after the phone rings and saying, hey, I need you to hit the scene, run down the cars. If you locate the cars, I'm not sure where they're at. If you locate the cars, let me know. We'll get a preservation of evidence letter sent out or what have you. You're creating a harder case for you as the attorney to have to potentially argue in court.
And I would even argue you're actually racking up your cost a little bit more because
you beat me to the punch.
Yeah. The less evidence there is, the longer it is that the expert's going to take in our office trying to analyze what little we have and trying to figure out how we can actually investigate this crash and come to a conclusion. Whereas when we have really simple, clear-cut evidence and we say, oh, well, here's where the vehicles hit, here's where they traveled to, this is the path they took, that's easy. Yeah. We can knock out a conclusion in no time.
Well, and I tell you, and this is maybe a little controversial opinion of mine, but we talk about how you and I have had this conversation about
Thunderdome is coming out.
how under investigated collisions are as a law enforcement in general. And I'm not just going to put that on law enforcement because there's times when collisions just are under investigated, period, even on the private sector side. It's not just law enforcement, but it really amazes me in this day and age, these cars and trucks that are on the roadway, there's a big chunk of them that have EDRs or black boxes, and how infrequently they're being imaged. I mean, these cars have got a ton of data in them. Not all of them. There's still a lot of older cars out there that aren't supported yet, but there's a lot of cars that are on the roadway that are supported.
Yeah.
And they're not getting that. People are not going after that evidence. And it's kind of, I can't help but ask myself, is it that they don't know or they don't want to know?
Yeah. And I think that second part right there, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of people don't want to know what that vehicle recorded because it's damaging. I mean, that vehicle, if it recorded bad information on your client, your fight just got a lot harder. Now, are there some avenues we can take to look at the validity of that recording? Yes, there are. And we're going to get into that in a future show. But yeah, it definitely creates an uphill battle. But the people that I see that, man, really look how fast the insurance company moves to take a car, get it to auction, because the longer they're sitting on it, they're racking up costs too, storage costs and everything else that they're responsible for. So they're not doing it maliciously, but
it's business.
They're just trying to move the claim along and get people paid, because at the end of the day, somebody on the other side is waiting for a check to buy a new car and everything else. So, I mean, I've seen it within 2 days of the crash that the insurance company's gone out to the tow yard, got the car, took it to the auction yard, and it just happened to be dropped off on a Tuesday, and the auction yard had an auction on Thursday, and guess what rolled across the auction block?
Yeah. Once that auction company gets the title, that thing's gone. It's sold. They're not, the auction company or the whatever storage or the auction facility where they have all these vehicles housed, they're not in the business to let these things sit around. They don't gain value by sitting on your yard for 10 years and become an antique, and now it's worth twice as much. It's a piece of broken metal. They're going to sell it as quickly
and that's
as possible.
it. And like I said, they're not doing it maliciously, but we've worked cases where, we've gone out within the same week of a crash and the car's already gone. We send out don't. Again, the attorney sent out a spoliation letter. Response comes back. Sorry, vehicle's gone. It's gone. Yeah. And so then we get into this fight of like, well, wait a second. You guys didn't download it. You didn't do this. You didn't. Well, no, but our adjuster went out and inspected it, and we didn't know anything more was going to come of this crash. Nobody was repped at the time. Sorry. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like I said, it wasn't a malicious move. It's just, they're just moving the claim along. And so now all of this evidence, this wonderful evidence, and man, you can get so much evidence off of a car. So much of it, not just off that the EDR, the event data recorder, the quote unquote black box, not just from that, but there's so much evidence off of these, the wheels. If we're lining stuff up on tire marks out on the roadway, we need to see those tires and the wheels of the car to get angles of impact and make sure that you're super accurate so that we can calculate speeds. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The damage is just critical on that. To do lamp analysis, was there headlights on? Was there turn signal on? All of this stuff.
Depending on the type of case you got, and you and I have had these conversations on the phone and in person and whatnot. But my thing has always been this: when do you want to know what you don't want to know? Do you want to know about it now so that you can develop, okay, this is my hurdle. This is going to be the hurdle that I'm going to have to talk my way through or explain or what have you. Do you want to know about it now, or do you want to know about it about 3 weeks before trial? Because the other side already knows about it. Or at trial. Yeah. I mean, hiding from the truth doesn't help you, at least in my opinion. And this is just maybe because of who I am, but hiding from the truth is going to haunt you.
Yeah. And we've had this conversation many a times with attorneys on the phone. Have we not had this exact conversation where you're like, man, listen, we downloaded the car and it's a 35 and your client was going 52, and the reaction that we get, the attorney is always like, oh man, and we're like, you know what? Yeah, it sucks. It's something that we have to contend with. Let's throw it in our report, get out in front of it, address it, but then show that it's a non-issue.
Right. And go out and do a traffic study.
Yeah. Because and we've had many of those where traffic on that roadway flows at 50. Yep. Like, that's just how fast traffic flows. Nobody in that area cares that it's a 35.
Go out to any of your interstates, and I guarantee you every attorney, well, let me go back because you can never guarantee everything.
Now, the only time I think speed, let me jump in here. The only time I think speed was a little too excessive for our case, we had a case down by Buckeye Lake, and I think Phil calculated a 10,000 mile an hour impact.
Hey, that was a test car. It was a NASA test car. Yeah.
I told Phil, I said, the problem is as the vehicle rolled off the assembly line 5 years ago, it was already past the point of no escape before the impact. Like the impact was already going to happen at 10,000 miles an hour.
See, being you put the disclaimer out there at the beginning of this podcast is you're going to keep it kid friendly. I'm going to refrain from saying exactly what I want to say to you at this point, or the gesture that I'd like to use that accompanies that saying.
But no, and we're going to get into that though too. That was just actually a technology issue with the program we were using at the time. Once we scrapped that and went back to old school hand math, it worked out perfectly.
You look at like you were saying the example, the EDR recorded a speed at 52 and a 35. Okay, what time of day are we talking? Is it rush hour? Morning rush, afternoon rush, lunchtime rush, and you go out and you study that traffic flow in that environment during those time frames. And most times you're going to see, you think about it when you're going to work, and every attorney or most attorneys that are watching this, I guarantee you, when they go to work, if it's a 60 mile an hour zone, are they doing 60? No, they're going with the flow of traffic. I mean, how many times do you set out on the interstate when you're working, running laser, and you clock the first car with the laser, the lead car in a pack of 50, 65 mile an hour zone, you got them at 79.
Yep.
And then every car behind them is 2 feet off the car in front, And
that's always been my thing. When I came out in the morning and I get out there and I hit, start shooting cars with the laser, and I'm sitting there doing radar, whatever the flow of traffic is, if they're traveling at 15 over, that's generally where I'll set my limit for that day. And, I'm like, you know what, that's fine. Then I'm looking for cars that are doing 18, 20 over.
Right.
Because just like you have the posted speed limits, there's also that section in the Ohio Revised Code, because again, we're both in Ohio, but most states are all similar on this, where the officer has that section that they can check and mark unsafe for conditions. And if traffic's flowing 15 over, really the unsafe for conditions is the guy doing the speed limit in the left lane, holding everybody up. People are flying up on him and forced to go around him and make lane. That's the guy that's unsafe for conditions.
And it's just interesting, So, I mean, back to the not wanting to know what you don't want to know or whatever. Get ahead of it. Get it out there. Yeah, so-and-so or this individual is doing 52 and a 35. Yep, all day long. Here's the evidence, but does that tank your case? No, not necessarily. But hiding from the evidence is not, in my opinion, is not the way to go.
Yep, I agree.
It's just, I think it's an issue of, if we get that information and my client's speeding because my client says they're speeding, then that just creates more arguments that I'm going to have to make and so on and so forth. Okay. That's just kind of is what it is, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And
nature of the beast.
I kind of offer this challenge then to any of the reconstruction companies or engineering firms or anybody else that is listening to this podcast. Remember the times that we're in here, and that a lot of the law firms and attorneys, you guys aren't going to get paid for a few years on this case. So what can we do to help? Because at the end of the day, having all of this evidence makes it easier on us. So what can we do to help? Like, we've done a couple of unique things. One, we don't charge the 100% of the cost of the case up front when you're doing a retainer, and we don't charge these big, massive retainers. What we've done during these times is lower that down, and just for evidence collection, because we get a lot of attorneys that call us and go, hey, look, can you just go out, take pictures of the scene, map the roadway, get a download of the vehicle, do the inspection, and then stop. Don't do anything else with it. Just collect the evidence, and next year, whenever, I'll get back with you once everything is filed and we are on and moving. then I'll start racking up my fees. And we go, yeah, absolutely. And so we'll roll out there and get all of that done. And you can get that done for, I mean, there's been a few times that we've been a couple $100. That's it. I mean, you're $500 into a case, $650 into a case, and you've got evidence collected. It's stored. It's not going anywhere because most of your reconstruction firms, if they don't have a records retention policy, you don't need to be doing business with them. But you have this, all of your records retention policies, and you can set the limits on it of how long we're going to store things and whatnot. And so if you can be, a couple $100 into it, but now you have a solid foundation. And then once the evidence is collected, it's not going anywhere. Like, now we're good.
Right.
So, now we can come back and actually do some work on it because we went out, took measurements, photographs, inspected the vehicle, got the CDR data. We have it all. And so, okay, maybe it's a little further away and you got some travel expenses, things like that. As long as everything's pretty straightforward and we can locate the vehicles and everything else, okay, maybe you're $1,500 into it. Maybe you're $2,000. And, but again, man, if you're a reconstruction company listening to this, and right now they just all fell out of their chair, just so you guys know, everybody listens. All of the reconstructionists right now are looking up our address and they are on their way. Like, they're like, oh, you want to call it the Thunderdome? Like, it's about to be on. But you got to remember right now, for, again, all of the reconstructionists and engineers listening to this, we have to be reasonable on what we're doing price-wise for the attorneys. We have to be. And if your reconstructionist isn't doing that, why are you doing business with them? Right? Because this is a give and take relationship. It really is. This isn't just and that's one of the things that I've had a problem with in this industry is I always feel like the attorneys, just by being an attorney, you bring 99.999% of all of the value to this business relationship, right? Because the reconstruction companies, we don't go out and generate our own cases. We can't file a case. I can't just go into court and defend somebody. It all comes from the attorney. So everybody's kind of got their hands out looking for business from you guys. And so if as soon as you're like, well, hey, can you just go collect this evidence? I'm not going to get paid on for a couple of years on this case. Can you just go out and collect the evidence? And they're like, yeah, it's going to be $10,000 to go collect evidence. That's crazy. That's crazy. And there's no way that you guys should be putting up with that. And this has to be a give and take. It really does. Our job as experts is to be an asset. And the biggest thing I learned from the Marine Corps was you have assets and liabilities, and especially being in a combat zone. And some of these court cases I've been involved in, the courtroom is the combat zone. Shots fired, coming over the, And so you have these assets and liabilities. And so for us, like our scout snipers, were a huge asset for us overseas. And so you could deploy them and they would be able to set up, do reconnaissance, watch troop movements and all of these things. The problem is if they don't do their job and become compromised, and now they start getting shot at and overrun by enemy forces, we have to dispatch a quick reaction force to go out there and save them. They've now become a liability. They're no longer an asset to us. They're 100% a liability because they now are pulling troops outside into an unsafe area and may get you killed. And so be careful doing business with experts who are no longer an asset and become a liability. And there's a liability on a few different fronts. Not only could we potentially be a liability that we aren't doing our job right, but a liability in terms of if we're using up all of your budget, and then once you actually file the case, you come to find out you don't have any money in there to support this giant budget. Is that not a liability?
Yeah.
Yeah. We just tanked your entire, because you guys have to make a living also.
Well, at the end of the day, when, talking about the evidence portion of this, I know we're in trying times with this whole pandemic, but the necessity for the evidence gathering and going after that evidence as quickly as possible really is no different now than what it was before the pandemic. The importance of it. I would challenge that and say it's more important now.
because of the length of how far out we may be going until cases are filed.
I think it's more important now, but I think that it was just as important before to go get it. I mean, how many times?
I meant not waiting. Like the importance of not waiting is more important now, I think.
Okay, I'd agree. But I mean, how many times, in the past where, you've someone's reached out to you, so you go after, you contact the agency to handle the collision, and you file your public records request for the report, the measurements, the photographs, and any statements, and you get the report. You get 5 photographs, no statements, and no measurements. So you call that agency and you're like, hey, according to the report, they took witness statements and, this is a whatever, serious injury crash. I didn't get the measurements and I'm only got four photos. That's all the photos we have.
And they're all black. They're all just black screens every once in a while with a reflection of the overhead light bar from a cruiser in the lens.
So at that point, if you wait, well, there's nothing available. Is there? Is there really nothing available because they didn't capture it when it happened or shortly after it happened when they responded to the collision? The assumption is that there's nothing there. I don't get that. I don't understand that thought process. And like I said, and we've talked about this, and this is not meant to be a bashing episode, but you cannot assume that the person before you did everything unless you go verify that.
Or did it right.
Or did anything.
Yeah.
There's people that just hate handling collisions and they just show up and, tab, fill, clear and go back to something else because they hate collisions, but they do them because it's part of their job.
Yep. And I tell you what, one of the best firms that we work with a lot uses us, and man, they're fast. I mean, they'll call us next day. The second they're signing a client up, they're on the phone with us and going, hey, look, we had a crash 3 days old. We're signing the guy up today or tomorrow. I need you to run out to the scene real quick, take a look, just take some photographs and measure anything that's out there. Just collect it and then hold off and we'll get back with you. And man, we've been out there and still been able to find blood on the asphalt. And that's that kind of stuff, especially if you're talking injuries to a motorcyclist or something like that, or a pedestrian crossing the road. Imagine having that because, a lot of judges aren't going to let those photos in because they don't like gory things coming into courtrooms and everything. But if you're talking about injuries, right? And so if nothing else, just on our diagram, when you see our scale diagram and it shows blood here, 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 big blood puddle here. Right. And so again, it's not gory. That's going to come in on the diagram and there's labels on it at least just so that they can see it and say, man, look how many times the pedestrian or the motorcycle rider hit and skipped off the asphalt. Oh, look, there was a flesh scuff on the asphalt here, and things like that. Think of the power and the impact that has to a jury when trying to decide injuries and damages.
Well, and I get the fact that the attorneys listening, you're at the mercy of your phone ringing, by the victim or the family of the victim saying, hey, this is, we just had this happen. So I get it. If the family doesn't call for 45 days, you can only react to the information you get when you get it as the attorney. But I think the point being that we're trying to make is, okay, once you get that notification, you need to pounce. That's when you need to strike while the iron's hot. Am I saying, like you said a while ago, take off 100 mile an hour and invest all the money into a full reconstruction? Not necessarily, but at least go get your evidence.
Yeah.
Go after as much as you can.
And then store it, have your expert company store it and just say, hey, look, just go grab this and then stop. Don't do anything with it. Just full stop. And that's something you can work out with your expert. So give me a call. Okay, I call the attorney back and say, hey, okay, I went out, I did this. This is where we're at. This is what I got done so far. Do you want me to hold up or what do you want to do? Because things can change, but you got to go get your evidence, folks. And that's just what it comes down to. I mean, if you're literally shooting yourself in the foot. If you don't get it, you may still be able to file a case and you may be able to get some sort of settlement, but I promise you, the settlement that you got is not as good as one that is reliant upon solid collected evidence.
Well, and the other side of that too, I hate to say it, and this might be a leap or an assumption on my part, but you know,
are we getting more? Are we going to get more hate mail?
Probably. My care meter on that is at 0, but anyhow, you know, experts in their field get stereotyped about what kind of expert they are based on the product or the work process that they use. That holds true for attorneys. You can't tell me, you know, because it happens in all fields, doctors, you know, your grocery stores, whatever. But the same holds true for attorneys. If you get known in your industry as being that attorney that presents cases or brings cases in that have no evidence, you're going to get other attorneys that are going to love having cases against you, you know, because they're going to be like, yeah, their expert is going to offer up an opinion based on nothing.
Yeah. Or the claims adjuster. Think about the claims adjuster at an insurance company. And I'm sure there's some staff attorneys that are watching this podcast and they're thinking the same thing. I guarantee. And I've had this conversation with some of these staff attorneys on some cases, and they're like, you know what? I'm not too worried about it. This guy doesn't really bring strong arguments. And that's their opinion. So what kind of offer are they going to, offer you guys? And so that's something you have to be cognizant about. And if you're a staff attorney for an insurance company, trust me when I tell you the PI attorneys know which insurance companies are investigating crashes.
Yeah,
they do. We have that conversation with them. You know what? This is so-and-so. Dude, they don't ever sink any time or money into this. Like, we're going to be able to walk all over them. And that's the conversation. So you've got to be cognizant of that. And just remember, and like Phil said, to echo that, man, strike fast on evidence. Whatever reconstruction company you guys are using or engineering firm or anything like that, just to at least collect evidence, get with them and ask them, hey, look, right now, during these times, could we work something out just to go out and start collecting this evidence? And then, maybe as the economy starts to open back up, go back to, a more traditional model. But for right now, is there something we can do? Because we need to collect and store this evidence. So, well, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for the day. As always, jump over to Facebook and make sure that you follow and join Crash Tech, the Expert Angle group. Also, if you want to leave us feedback, have an idea for a show, or you'd like to be on a future show, head on over to crashtechexpertangle.podbean.com and click the link on the right that says contact the show. Right there, you can put all your information in and it comes right to me and Phil. If you would like more information on expert consulting services or training, make sure you visit us online at www.crashtechreconstruction.com. And finally, if you're a PI attorney, make sure you request to join the Crash Site Facebook group. Or if you're a defense attorney, make sure that you request to join the Crash Tech, Well, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for the day. As always, jump over to Facebook and make sure you follow and join Crash Tech, the Expert Angle group. Also, if you want to leave us feedback, have an idea for a show, or would like to be on a future show, head over to crashtechexpertangle.podbean.com and click the link on the right that says contact the show. The form will come up. Put anything that you want right in there. If you want more information on expert consulting services or training, visit us online at www.crashtechreconstruction.com. And finally, if you're a PI attorney, make sure you request to join the Crash Site Facebook group. Or if you're a defense attorney, make sure you request to join the Crash Site Defense Facebook group. Neither site contains any ads or spam. It's just a private community that brings experts from all different areas together with attorneys to collaborate or ask questions. So again, guys, thanks for tuning in. And remember, always leave your accident victims better off than you found them, because at the end of the day, everything we're doing is for them.